from St. Louis Public Radio. This is the Politically Speaking Hour on St. Louis on the Air. I'm Jason Rosenbaum. For years, Missouri's Children's Division has struggled to recruit and retain employees who investigate child abuse and neglect. Much of the well-publicized struggles stem from the demands of the job: long hours, lower pay than those who do similar work in other states or in the private sector, and the work. It's emotionally taxing. But recently, Children's Division Director Sarah Smith unveiled a restructuring plan around how investigators do their jobs. Under the new approach, workers will look into specific types of abuse and neglect, which she says should have more people examining complex cases. I spoke with Smith earlier this month while she was in St. Louis. I first asked her to detail how the child abuse and neglect process works and what investigators did for their jobs before she launched the reorganization plan.
They had a lot of hats that they're wearing. So the initial hotline that comes through from our 24/7 hotline unit is alerted currently to the county in which the child lives. And so with that, they would be receiving a variety of reports to respond to: assessments, referrals, investigations. And so depending on the nature of that report, our statutory framework outlines that, when they see children, when they see families, when they do walkthroughs of homes, collateral contacts that they make. And so they have a huge job in ensuring the safety of children throughout Missouri.
What is the difference between a employee going in for an investigation versus an assessment?
Sure.
I feel like there is a difference between the two that I just want to suss out here.
We are a two-track state, and so our assessments, our family assessments, are really around providing services to families so that the child can remain safely in the home. And then our investigations, oftentimes we are required to co-investigate and give law enforcement the option to co-investigate those reports with us. Normally those have some type of criminal element involved. So we're thinking our sexual abuse, severe physical abuse, fatalities, those types of reports, trafficking. Those are the types of reports that are coming in as investigations that we would want to make sure we're contacting law enforcement on those, and potentially also still putting services in the home, seeing if the child can safely remain in that home or not, and making plans. Also, because when the initial hotline is made, the reporter might only have a certain amount of information, right? So our field team members have the ability to what we call track change those reports. And so if they're out on an assessment and something else comes out, right, that is a concern, they can track change that to an investigation, then bring in law enforcement and go from there. And also, if something was reported and it's found, not to be exactly what the situation is when our field team members on the ground get there, they can track change that to an assessment as well. And so that's reflected that way in the family's history.
So I think the big change that you're making is that instead of doing both assessments and investigations, potentially in the same day, child abuse investigators are basically going to do one or the other from now on. Is that basically the big change, one of the big changes that you've made?
Yes. So we're really excited about our new structure for our child abuse and neglect team throughout the state. So really a more professional path that we're using for our team members. We hear a lot from team members that are still boots on the ground with us, and team members that have unfortunately left because the job is too much. They're not getting the right professional path. They're out on potentially an investigation just coming out of training. And we need to make sure that we're equipping them to be able to handle those investigations. So we're rolling out several specialized teams that team members statewide are filling out surveys for where they feel that they are most applicable to fit in and do the work. So our newborn crisis assessment team, chronic neglect team, sexual abuse investigations, a mobile unit to provide assistance statewide, general investigations, general assessments, and then also our critical investigations unit and out-of-home investigations units, which are already established.
Can you just talk about how extensive an investigation has to be, and also to kind of drive this point home, how a lot of these investigations require physically going to people's houses and looking for things with your own eyes as opposed to computers and stuff like that.
Sure. One of the most important things that our team does before they even make one action on the report is looking in our database to see, has this family had any history with the division? Is there anything that we need to know to make sure we're making the right decision for children and families? And also for their own safety, right? Like if they've been if another worker has been out at a home and there's been some type of safety situation, I mean, we want to make sure they know that before they're responding to that home. And so they're pulling together family history, potentially checking CaseNet. If it's an investigation, we're calling law enforcement before we respond to see, what does law enforcement know about this home? And where do they want to meet? How do they want to plan and co-investigate side by side? And so an investigation and an assessment involves talking with all the children in the home in a space that they are safe, talking with the parents, making collateral contacts, potentially having a child advocacy center interview, which for those that don't know about child advocacy centers, they're an amazing space and resource throughout the state to help provide a safe space for the child to make a disclosure if there is a disclosure to be made one time with all of our multidisciplinary team partners there with a trained forensic interviewer. And that is captured on video to allow the child just hopefully one time of making their disclosure. The evidence is captured, and then the investigation can go from there. Also, we're working alongside law enforcement on those investigations to see how and when we're gonna interview the alleged perpetrator. So making our referrals over to our medical partners, talking with the schools, potentially talking with daycares. And so there's a lot of work that goes into both assessments and investigations, and it just depends what type. And that's where this MOCAN response really helps is what you're supposed to be doing on each of those, and you're not having to toggle between all the different kinds to know who really your foundation for making decisions is going to what that's going to look like.
A lot of people I've talked to, including people that left the investigative space and also child welfare advocates, say this is a really hard job to recruit people for and to retain people for. Is that what was going through your mind when you decided to make the change to essentially the structure of this job?
Yes. I mean, having done this job for over 20 years in every program line within the division, this is going to help not only our investigators, but our other program lines as well. I'm thinking of our family-centered service and alternative care program lines to be able to offer them more support from our circuit managers and field support managers and take hopefully the on-call off of them because right now we have a lot of people statewide pitching in to be on call, and to get that work-life balance of just being able at the end of the day to, you've worked your 40 hours. We're really trying to hire evening and weekend shift team members. I'm thinking about individuals that might have children at home, right? And so if you're able to stay at home during the day with your children and work an evening or weekend shift, that opens up a huge opportunity for us to hire evening and weekend shift specific versus just Monday through Friday during the day and having an on-call. And so really, the thought process behind this is trying to be an expert in everything is just unrealistic of our workforce with one of the most difficult jobs in state government and just in general, even outside of state government, the things that our team members encounter on a daily basis involving children and families is incredibly difficult. And any way that we can make that more manageable for them, I think we have to do that.
That was Missouri Children's Division Director Sarah Smith, who is overhauling how child abuse investigations work. We'll continue our conversation with Smith after this short break. This is the Politically Speaking Hour on St. Louis on the Air. Welcome back to the Politically Speaking Hour on St. Louis on the Air. I'm Jason Rosenbaum. We now return to our conversation with Sarah Smith, the director of Missouri's Children's Division. She's detailing her plan to reorganize how investigators look into suspected abuse and neglect. I want you to kind of walk me through if I get hired at like $45,000 a year and I decide that this work is really important, I want to stay and try to be on this professional path. What will that mean in terms of paying me a more competitive salary in 2, 3, 4 years so I can still do this job and not be, financially strapped, so to speak?
Sure. There are a couple different options. So with the tenure pay that Governor Kehoe that had passed last legislative session, after a certain amount of years, you start to receive an increase just based on that pay plan. And then additionally, our professional path or career ladder has children's service workers or children's service specialists 1 through 4. And so those are embedded in based on the number of years of experience. And so they'll work up that way. And then if they're working on a team that is either the out-of-home investigations team or the critical investigations team, they'll also receive an additional bump there. And that is something eventually I'd love to look at for all of our specialized teams, some type of bump at some point down the road once we get MOCAN response up and running.
I want to talk about how this could practically help investigations. I could see a situation where somebody goes to somebody's house and maybe for the first or second time and may find I know this is a hard thing to articulate, but a sexual abuse situation that they are just not as experienced as other people. Would they be able to talk with some of the people on the team that specializes in sexual abuse situations to basically understand how to deal with that situation the best way they can?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is exactly what we're hopeful for, but more so even either to transfer to that team at that point once we know that there's a sexual abuse allegation, that we transfer it over to that team to have that expertise, or perhaps they come alongside also. They're coaching, mentoring that new team member, but also providing their investigative lens and that support. But the goal is to make sure that not just one person has that, a new team member out there. So whether we transfer that over to the specialized team or they come alongside, depending on where they're at in the assessment or investigation process, both of those teams are going to have to work side by side. And I think, we're getting the right people in and the right structure to be able to do that.
Do you think that this could just make the overall job of investigating more manageable because there's more than just one person involved depending on the situation?
In my experience and the team members that I talked to, they said to just even understand one part of the process, it takes well over a year to do that. And I think that's fair. In any role I've been in state government, to feel really confident, I have had to be there over a year because the situations that come up in child welfare are so gray. And so the ability to have a team that's supporting you and to be able to have that area that you feel confident, I think that then you'll know the steps in a more efficient way to do a thorough investigation or assessment in a more timely manner. To give, either whatever that safety decision is, whoever we need to contact, or if there are no concerns, to give closure to that family in a more timely way.
Yeah, and I think that there have been a number of high-profile incidents that I'm sure that you've seen where somebody who has gotten hotlined before or was visited by Children's Division, and there's just a horrible tragedy that happens, usually involving kids either being very malnourished or killed afterwards. It seems to me that if you had a team around somebody and they could give people guidance about how to deal with something that maybe seem like a gray area, hopefully you avoid those situations where you don't get to a family before it's too late. Mm-hmm. Now we can't. Now I just want to clarify here, and I know I'm caveating all over the place. You're not going to be able to prevent that in every situation because child abuse investigators can only do so much. But that has to be also one of the hopes here that you prevent tragedies from happening upstream by getting at it downstream, essentially. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say. I think our comprehensive review team that we're building really on the front end to help pull that history together. Right now, I think our team members are, like I said, wearing a lot of hats, going to a variety of things in a fast manner, and the ability to pull that history together, know how we've worked and what interventions potentially did or didn't work for a family before. Is critical to make sure that we're making different or more and thoughtful decisions with the situation if we're out again. And so between that and these decisions are incredibly hard. Like, you have to have your supervisor engaged and at the table. And to be a supervisor and be able to provide next steps and making sure that we are making the right decision, that supervisor role is critical. And I think with this structure and also pouring into our supervisors, that we have our Supervisor Academy launching the first time our supervisors in child welfare in Missouri have ever had training specifically for them. We just had our pilot session in April, and that's rolling out. And so to be able to provide them that no matter which team they're in, not only our new team members needs their supervisory guidance. I mean, that supervisory guidance all the way through our critical investigations and out-of-home investigations unit is critical because the cases are so complex, and that burden should not be on any one person's shoulder. It should be bringing in experts, even if they're outside of Children's Division, to help make those critical decisions.
How long would somebody have to work as a child abuse investigator to move on to a more specialized unit within Children's Division?
And there's probably a mixed answer on that. And so, because if we have somebody that's coming from a law enforcement agency, potentially, they have investigative skills through what they've had, and we would be looking at putting them in potentially one of those investigative roles. And if they've been potentially with another state's child welfare agency, they could come in and be in one of those more seasoned roles. And so, I think that those pieces matter. If they're coming in as a brand new worker, it would probably be 2 to 3 years before they're ready to move on to one of those more specialized teams.
And you mentioned this before, but your goal is to have pay increases for all the specialized teams eventually. Correct?
I'd love to look at that eventually, and in our other program lines. And so I know I talk a lot right now about MOCAN response, but the benefits to our other program lines are huge, and we need all of them, right? Like, we need our family-centered service case team members in homes helping support families so they don't go further upstream, and our alternative care workers helping children get to permanency or sustainable care in a timely manner. And so how do we embed professional paths in all program areas and retain our team across the board?
And if anybody has listened to me do interviews on this topic over the last 2 years, it is not very much of a secret that I think that paying child abuse investigators is something that needs to be seriously considered. But one devil's advocate argument I put with myself is, as you just mentioned, there are a lot of other positions at Children's Division that are really important that you wouldn't just want to not offer those same sort of things to. I guess to have a collective professional path, would that require more legislative buy-in and make sure that you have more money to use so you can do things like this? Because I can understand you could do this for certain jobs because there aren't that many, but if you're talking about 2,000 people, it seems like it would require legislative buy-in.
I think that once we get our team members, this is a huge shift of getting around 600 team members centralized.
So it's more than just a few people.
Yeah,
I want to make that clear.
It's a huge organizational change, but one that other states have done, and one that even other divisions within our Missouri state government have. More of a bifurcated system because it's so much in the human services space. So I would want to evaluate, once we have everybody in their spot, and we have new team members coming in the door, then what are our gaps look like? What does our service array look like in the other two program areas? And be really thoughtful about what our needs look like there, and then come back to the table and be able to share those things with our partners.
Are you confident that this structure will be able to be sustainable, especially in difficult budgetary times?
I think that this will actually, be it will be sustainable in difficult budget times. We're doing this all within our own resources that we have now with lateral positions and within our statutory framework. So I think that this would be sustainable moving forward.
What has been the reaction of people that work at Children's Division to this change? Because as you mentioned, this is a pretty massive change in their job and focus.
So having an organization of almost 2,000 team members throughout the state, 46 judicial circuits with a variety of tenure, honestly, I've gotten a mixed bag. So I've received lots of feedback and emails excited for the change, thanking for a bold step, something different, something that is more manageable for them, specifically around the on-call. That is something we've heard a lot of positive feedback about, not only from our investigators, but also from our other program lines that have been pitching in to cover on-call. And so that is one piece that they're really excited about, is reducing the number of hours on call. And then we have some team members that until they're placed in their teams, and they've had the option to select their team, and then we'll look at how many we need. They are able to rank those choices between the teams that are fit within their tenure. I think they'll feel more assured when they know their team and their supervisor, which will be over. We wanted to bring them along for the next couple months and build that with them, reset, retrain. And so once they have those specific coverage areas and supervisor, I think those are the main things that they want to know. And I want to make sure that they're able to have that as soon as possible.
That was Missouri Children's Division Director Sarah Smith, detailing her proposal to overhaul how child abuse investigators do their jobs. You can read more about her plan by going to stlpr.org.
This episode was produced by Jason Rosenbaum.
Our audio engineer is Aaron Dorr. This podcast was mixed and edited by our executive producer, Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.